Avoiding spam likely. Best practices for calls that convert. Why spam likely is quietly killing cold calling ROI. If you're running outbound today, your biggest competitor often isn't another vendor. It's the spam likely banner on a prospect's phone. Between carriers tightening filters and buyers refusing unknown numbers, even a strong script and clean ICP can get buried before your rep says hello. That's why call reputation now belongs on the same scorecard as email deliverability and meeting rate. Carriers are reacting to a relentless wave of abuse. U.S. consumers received about 52.8 billion robocalls in 2024, which keeps networks and analytics providers in permanent defense mode. When the ecosystem is forced to play better safe than sorry, legitimate B2B cold calling gets caught in the crossfire, especially if you're dialing at scale from numbers that look anonymous or inconsistent. The behavioral headwind is just as real. Research shows 8 in 10 Americans generally don't answer unknown calls, and Hire reports 46% of unidentified calls go unanswered, while 92% are assumed fraudulent. If your outbound motion depends on calls, whether you run an in-house team or partner with a cold calling agency, identity and reputation are now table stakes, not polish. How spam labeling works and why B2B teams get flagged. When your SDR dials, your call is evaluated by carriers and analytics engines like Haya, First Orion, and TNS before it ever reaches the recipient screen. These systems don't judge intent, they judge patterns, volume, velocity, answer rates, declines, complaint signals, and historical behavior tied to the number. If your traffic looks like robocalling, your real business call can be labeled or blocked just like the bad actors. The volume problem is massive. Haya flagged roughly 20 billion plus calls as suspected spam in the first half of 2024 alone. And in 2023, more than 28% of unknown calls were flagged as spam or fraud in some tracking. That default suspicion means unknown numbers often start life behind a credibility tax, so small execution mistakes, like over-dialing from one caller ID, get punished faster than most sales teams expect. The downstream impact is measurable. One analysis found contact rates have dropped by roughly 40% due to inaccurate spam labeling and blocking, and another industry survey reported 81% of businesses lost revenue because calls were incorrectly flagged, with 15% reporting losses above $100,000. If you run cold calling services, an outbound sales agency model, or an internal sales development agency, that's not an IT nuisance. It's pipeline leakage. Invest in identity before you invest in more dials. The fastest path to better connects is usually not more activity, it's better identity. If your numbers aren't registered and your caller authentication is weak, scaling an outsourced sales team or adding more reps just multiplies a broken signal. We treat call reputation like email deliverability. Fix the infrastructure first, then scale volume. Start with stir shaken. In plain English, it's how carriers validate that you're authorized to use the number you're presenting, and the gold standard is A-level attestation. One business spam labeling study reported answer rates increased by over 500% after upgrading to A-level attestation, because the call stops looking like spoofed traffic to the network. Next, get your identity consistent everywhere prospects and analytics providers look. CNAM consistency, business registration via free caller registry, and validation through the major analytics ecosystems that influence labeling. If you're also running a cold email agency motion or LinkedIn outreach services alongside calls, identity consistency matters even more. Familiarity across channels reduces declines, complaints, and report spam taps that poison your number pool over time. And yes, those little signals add up. Dialing Hygiene, the guardrails that keep you out of spam traps. Call reputation is behavioral, not just technical. Carriers and analytics providers watch what happens after you dial, how often you call, how quickly you repeat attempts, whether calls are answered or declined, and whether your calls look machine-like. If you wouldn't send 10,000 cold emails from a brand new domain on day one, don't do the phone equivalent with one caller ID. As a baseline, many teams stay in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 cold dials per number per day, then spread load across a clean number pool so no single caller ID gets hammered. Pair that with per prospect limits. For example, no more than 2 calls per day and 6 to 8 total attempts over a 2 to 3 week cadence to avoid the rapid-fire patterns that trigger blocks and complaints. Local presence can help connect rates, but it can also backfire if it looks like spoofing. If you use it, keep volume per number under control, register those numbers, and don't constantly swap caller IDs mid-sequence just to trick pickups. The goal is to look like a normal business calling with a clear purpose, not a call farm rotating area codes. Call reputation is phone deliverability. If your identity and behavior look suspicious, your best reps and best lists won't matter. Design cadences that don't look like robocalls. The highest performing B2B cold calling services don't win by brute force. They win by sequencing intelligently. Power dialers and 5 attempts in 2 days can be a quick path to a spam label because they concentrate declines, short calls, and complaints into a tight time window. Instead, build multi-touch cadences that blend 1 or 2 well-timed calls with email and LinkedIn so prospects recognize your name before the next ring. That approach aligns with how buyers behave. Hiya found 77% of consumers are more likely to answer when they know who's calling, and the same principle holds when you're calling decision makers on personal mobiles. If your cold email agency motion introduces the value prop and your call follows with a specific reason, you'll usually get fewer declines and more real conversations per dial. We also coach for the first 10 seconds because it impacts both conversion and reputation. A pile of sub-10-second calls is a robocall signature, whether it's caused by bad data, instant hangups, or weak openings. Train reps to open with a clear, relevant reason for calling and to leave concise voicemails instead of bailing. Those extra seconds can improve outcomes while sending better quality signals back into the analytics ecosystem. The mistakes that burn your numbers and how to fix them. Running your entire outbound motion off 1 or 2 main numbers is one of the fastest ways to get flagged. High volume concentrated on a single caller ID creates a predictable pattern of unanswered calls and declines, and once that number is labeled, every team that uses it, SDRs, AEs, support, billing, feels the damage. The fix is simple operational design. Separate number pools by function and spread activity so one dirty lane doesn't contaminate everything. Overdialing the same prospect in a short window is the next common failure. Multiple rapid attempts can trigger blocks and report spam taps, which are heavy negative inputs for analytics providers. Use hard limits in your dialer, force channel mixing, and create familiarity between attempts so your next call has context instead of irritation. List quality is the silent reputation killer most teams underestimate. Wrong numbers, stale contacts, and consumer mobiles masquerading as business lines drive short calls, angry replies, and a low answer-decline ratio that looks indistinguishable from spam. Tighten your ICP, verify phone data before dialing, and lean on B2B list-building services that prioritize accuracy over volume, because one bad batch can drag an entire number pool down. One bad batch. Monitor, remediate, and put spam risk in your dashboards. Most teams discover a spam problem late, after connect rates collapse and reps assume the market is cold. Treat caller ID reputation like a living asset. Inventory every number across SDRs, AEs, marketing, and customer success. Then check labels in tools like Hiya, Truecaller, and Nomo Robo. If you find spam, scam risk, or consistently low answer performance, stop high-volume dialing from that number immediately and begin remediation. Remediation is a process, not a panic button. Dispute incorrect labels through business portals where available. Document your dialing practices, and consider resting or retiring numbers that don't recover. In parallel, roll out a clean pool with better identity, registration, CNAM consistency, and A-level stir shaken wherever possible, so you can keep building pipeline while the older number heals. Operationally, instrument spam risk directly in your CRM and BI stack. Track connect rate, average call duration, and spam flags by number and carrier, and set alerts for sudden drops or spikes in ultra-short calls. When you manage this like a revenue system, similar to how an SDR agency would manage email deliverability, you can catch problems early instead of losing a quarter of output before anyone knows what happened. Next steps. Make call reputation a repeatable revenue play. The goal isn't perfection, it's control. Put a single owner, often RevOps, in charge of call reputation. Define guardrails for per number and per contact dialing, and review status weekly the way you review pipeline coverage. When call reputation is treated as a core KPI, your cold callers spend less time dialing into silence and more time in real conversations. If you're considering sales outsourcing, make call deliverability part of the vendor evaluation, not just activity volume or scripts. The best cold calling companies will be able to explain how they manage number pools, stir-shaken attestation, registration, compliance defaults, and cadence design. That's how you protect connect rates while scaling an outsourced B2B sales motion. At SalesHive, we've built our outbound engine around these realities because we can't afford burned numbers at scale. We combine cold calling, email, and LinkedIn touches so calls aren't isolated events, and we operationalize number hygiene as rigorously as email domain health. Whether you build in-house or hire SDRs through a partner, the playbook is the same. Prove identity, dial like a business, measure reputation, and fix issues before they turn into spam likely everywhere.